Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Gerry Elsdon. I'm a South African media and social personality and a TB survivor here in South Africa. When I was diagnosed with tuberculosis, I was already a name and a national treasure to people in South Africa. I was the first host of Big Brother. Moderator was the next, in fact. And I was part of some media opportunities on the continent of Africa that will go down in history as firsts. I had a wonderful career, lived an awesome life, and the diagnosis of TB came as a huge shock in a country where it should really have been under control by then, and it wasn't. My knowledge of tuberculosis was very, very little. And as it turned out, my TB was found in my womb, which rendered my womb no longer viable and therefore infertile. Had it been diagnosed early, the consequences and the experience for me would have been entirely different. My research and experiences with physicians later brought to the realization that infertility due to tuberculosis in our rural areas is rife. And therefore, early diagnosis would be key if only we understood our bodies and only if we understood the access that we need, actually not just the patient, but also physicians understood how to diagnose TB and how to keep a lookout for it. The amazing experiences that I've had throughout it after 14 years of working in TB is that I chose to become a public voice for those living with TB, and I guess in the process was able to eradicate some of the stigma, at least, by being that voice. I've been a spokesperson for the Stop TB campaign for the World Health Organization. I've worked for many, many years with the International Federation of the Red Cross. And I'm really a social activist. It doesn't stop. We have to continue to be a voice for those who cannot at this time speak for themselves. And so I'm extremely proud to be a part of this conversation and to be hosting the conversation on the social determinants of women and children's health. My panel for this afternoon, Sumaya Saluja, is a youth advocate from the Global Education First Initiative in India. Please welcome her. And she's joined by Cherelle Fruean, who is from Samoa, where she's the coordinator for the YWCA and an entrepreneur in her own right in Samoa. Also joining us is Lindlyn Moma, who is the Regional Advocacy Manager for WaterAid. Please welcome her. Now, it's really impossible to think about paternal and child health without considering the three topics or areas of expertise that these women bring to the conversation, amongst others. Water and sanitation issues, education and sexual reproductive health, really, as well as climate change, which is the Cherelle's area of interest, are only three spokes in a much bigger wheel that we have to tackle. And the advocacy, social advocacy, but also the activism around it is very, very necessary. Let's begin with the issue of water and sanitation. In the context of Africa, you could talk about this all day.
Thank you, Gerry. Yes, I could talk about water and sanitation every day because actually 2.5 billion people in this planet do not have access to basic sanitation. And when I talk about basic sanitation, I'm not talking about a place to go to like a toilet. I'm talking about the safe disposal of human excreta without touching it, and preventing diseases from human excreta. So it's more than just the toilet. When I'm talking about hygiene, I'm talking about hand washing, I'm talking about menstrual hygiene management, which is something I'm so passionate about because I've had personal experiences as a lady, as a young girl, a 15-year-old girl who did not have sanitary materials to dispose of menstrual hygiene. And this is fundamental for the health of every woman, every young girl. Because without proper menstruating facilities, without a toilet, without facilities for hand washing, you cannot manage your menstrual hygiene properly. That leads to all sorts of infections, such as urinary tract infections for girls and young women, which can lead to infertility in the future. And I know that diarrhea and cholera are the most basic, they're the most common factors of newborn and infant deaths in the world. And we need to prevent this by making sure that water, sanitation, and hygiene are essential in every healthcare facility. We cannot be living in this age and time where you have healthcare facilities without basic water, without basic sanitation, without basic healthcare or facilities for hand washing. How do we as women come up to a facility and we have to bring bottled water? We have to buy bottled water to come into a facility because the facility does not have water and sanitation. You cannot, as a pregnant mother, you cannot actually your birth processes are not hygienic because there's no sanitary facilities, there's no water in the facilities. This is the age and time in which we're living in, and the health sector needs to make sure that water, sanitation, and hygiene are principal, are the cornerstone of making sure that maternal and newborn child health are stopped.
And that, of course, the focus absolutely should be of the health sector, but education around these issues is very, very important. Not only sexual health, but also the issues that Lyndall's just mentioned. I mean, right now we know that the girl child, well, the person who is able to go to school up to secondary school is less likely to become pregnant early, less likely to marry early as well, Sumaya.
Thank you. And firstly, what an honor to be part of this entire event. I feel with education, and when we do talk about education and women's health and sexual and reproductive health rights, there's a bit of a chicken and an egg phenomena that goes on, because when we talk about education, the barriers that don't allow girls to come into school are also the barriers. When they're talked about separately, then education becomes an enabler for that not to happen. So but within education, there's also a few things that one needs to understand. And carrying on, I can tell you from my personal experience, I did have the privilege of going to primary school, transitioning, and completing secondary education. However, did I know most of, did I have any information about a lot of other things regarding myself? I absolutely did not. I got it outside post at the age of 17 in a non-formal setting when I moved to another city, and I accessed it myself, and I could, because I was in a larger city and those facilities existed. It was only when I learned I had people investing in a safe space, learn how to get key information and skills that allowed me to make informed decisions, negotiate challenges and conflicts, and have agency over my own body, life, and relationships and opportunities, is when I could go on further to work on programs that worked on getting other girls into school and investing in them and empowering them. Secondly, as I must add, with education, when we are trying to get girls into school, and a lot of girls aren't in school or are dropping out, and we're trying to negotiate, we're largely negotiating with mothers because they're the ones who are there. When we start doing that, and a lot of them are young mothers, when we started doing that, a lot of them turned around and looked at us and said, but we don't have the authority to make that decision. Come on Sunday, come on an afternoon when the fathers are there and negotiate with them. So how could you work with even mothers to empower them to be able to make those decisions for their children because they do want it? So there are multiple of cross-sectional factors that push and pull and impact how and what we can access, whether it's education, whether it's sanitation, whether it's health, whether it's our own sexual and reproductive health and rights. They all come together. So
And then, Cherelle, there's an issue that there's the issue of climate change and our environment, which I think for many, many years, we've tackled everything but, because often people don't think about it in the context of mother and child health.
Yes, thank you, Gerry, and talofa, and good evening, everyone. Coming from a small island developing state, specifically Samoa and the Pacific, there are four main effects of climate change on RMNCH that I'd like to highlight, and they are access to health services, infectious diseases, food insecurity, and water sanitation, as Lindlyn spoke about in detail, and lastly, violence against women. In times of natural disaster, health services and infrastructure, including access to family planning and maternal health services, become extremely limited, if not non-existent. Women and girls are also at increased risk of sex-specific health issues, such as sudden stoppage of menstruation, miscarriages, premature delivery, and postpartum hemorrhage. Environmental changes such as deforestation can increase the occurrence of infectious diseases, especially those with an insect or animal vector like malaria or dengue, to which pregnant women and children are most vulnerable. Women and children in the rural areas are one of the most susceptible groups to health risks, as they are known to live off the land. The effects of climate change decreases access to natural resources and reduces crop yields and surface water. Reduced food intake endangers maternal health and heightens the risk of child and maternal mortality and also malnutrition. Insufficient drinking water and/or water to use for sanitation also leads to many health problems, including sexual and reproductive health problems. It is also common post-disaster for displaced women and girls who are living in shelters to be exposed to unsafe situations, sexual exploitation, and/or abuse. Violence against women almost triples during times of disaster, with pregnant women and girls and children at the core of this very group, affecting not only their physical health, but their mental health and emotional stability. Now, these are only a few of the effects of climate change on RMNCH specifically, but it is a cross-cutting issue amongst all levels of society. It is an urgent matter, and we as young people, the inheritors of the land, have capacities to develop innovative interventions that can reverse the impact of climate change, and we urge our leaders and states to take action now.
Well, there it is, a call to action necessary, in fact, not just on the area of climate change, but as we know, both in terms of the education of the girl child in not only developing countries. There are areas in which we simply neglect giving certain types of information to certain people, just taking it for granted. They should know, for example, the same way I should have known that, hairspray shouldn't be used under my arms. But, I just think it's very, very important that we continue to educate, to inform, to highlight, and to empower, no matter what our environment. So thank you very much for your contributions and your activism amongst the youth in particular in the various areas that you're working.